Welcome to the F3 podcast, where we teach women how to optimize their hormonal and metabolic health so they can finally meet their physique goals no matter what stage of life they are in. Hi, I'm Jane. I am a functional health coach with a focus on female health, helping women find hope where hope was once lost through nutrition training and supplementation. I also have Coach Chandra with me.
Hi, I'm Chandra. I am also a functional health coach looking to help as many women as possible on their health and wellness journey, leading them to a better quality of life. Disclaimer, this podcast should not be taken as medical advice. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any health problem, nor is it intended to replace the advice of a physician.
All right, all right. Well, we are excited to be back and talk about the importance of caloric intake in a reverse diet. The reason that we're talking about that today is I personally am going through a reverse after competing, which we know is an extreme in dieting down, and then in a sense, dieting back up. And what's cool about, going through it as a competitor is that we can take all of the elements of what we do in the competition world, pull them back a little bit, and also use them for the general population where it makes sense.
Yes.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so there's three instances that reverse diets become really important. And so the first is like in your case, when we've just competed, we want to get calories back up. We want to get some body fat back on you. We want you to start feeling good because we know anybody that has competed, you're super low calorie, your metabolism is reduced, you feel like shit mentally and physically, ultimately. And so getting those calories up in the best way possible and reversing out of what you had just done and putting some weight back on, but good weight, we still want to stay lean, is what is going to help you metabolically, physically, mentally, all of those things. But there's other instances when we want to use a reverse diet. And so maybe that's somebody who has dieted down and they got to their goal body weight. Well, whenever you diet, that's a form of stress on the body. It's lowering your metabolism. So we ultimately want to reverse out of that while keeping the fact that you hit that goal body, get your calories up so you can enjoy life a little bit more and so that you can feel better and we can get that metabolic rate increased. And then the other instance that we want to implement a reverse diet is people that have been dieting forever. Their calories are super low. Their body isn't responding. So we ultimately want to reverse them out of that so that they can start seeing fat loss progress again with the increase of their metabolic rate.
Yep. 100% agree with all of that. And when I think of reverse, in a nutshell, everything you just said is health first, right?
Yes.
Like we want to make sure in my situation, and just thinking about what I just went through, which I've gone through multiple times, how quickly can I get my food back up without gaining too much body fat? So to get to that healthy spot. And just to touch on, some of the things that start to happen when you are in a cut phase, when you have gone through a quote unquote diet, whether it was guided or on your own, you might start thinking of these things like, oh wait, that did happen, when I dieted the last time. But things like brain fog will start to creep in, low motivation, sleep issues, things of that sort. And it's to your point exactly, because your body is under stress. You're not feeding it, and food is fuel. We always have to remember that, like, food is fuel to help our bodies to optimize hormones. And when I say hormones, I'm not just talking about the sex hormones of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Those are included, but I'm thinking thyroid stimulating hormone, that T3, T4 conversion. I'm thinking cortisol. I'm thinking insulin. And when you start to diet down, you put all that stress on your body, and yes, you can get results. Not saying that you don't have to go to a caloric deficit to drop body fat. We know that that is something that has to happen. But ultimately, how do you get back out of that and come back to maintenance? And so something that was kind of cool that I did differently this time, and we use this as a strategy and tool, and now we manipulate it depending on the client at hand, is the anti-inflammatory or flush. Highly anti-inflammatory plan for 14 to 21 days. And it's something that I implemented immediately after competing. My calories were really low. My body was stressed, and it was showing up for me in my sleep. I mean, I really wasn't sleeping. It would be 2 hours and I was awake, and then try to sleep for 2 hours and then wake back up. A lot of brain fog. Energy was really drained. I wasn't getting good pump workouts anymore. And we know that that's part of competing to get lean enough for stage. However, I'm sure that just resonated with somebody listening, because those elements happen when you diet down as well. And so that flush, it not only got my calories to what's really a maintenance for me, about 2,000 calories, maybe a little bit under, quick. But I also immediately, I'm telling you, within 5 days of, I mean, maybe even three, sleeping through the night. Energy's back, and I wasn't drinking caffeine because I pulled caffeine during that time. So, and I was on a lot of caffeine. And that the brain fog just like left. And so, we always want to think like health first, because if you're not healthy, you're never going to get the results that you want at the gym. And I think that's so cool about what we do, because we care about that piece. Even if somebody comes to us and just says like, hey, I want to lose 10 pounds, we're like, cool, but we got to do some things first to work the foundational stuff in order to get to that place of dieting down, if that's something that we end up having to do.
Yes. And like you said, always, always, always health first. And I think that's what most people miss. And a big problem when it comes to competing, and also when it comes to diet culture in general, is that it's not health first. Whereas if you do things health first, I mean, you're always going to be trying to prioritize metabolic function, hormonal function, all of those types of things. I think it's really fascinating because most people who haven't experienced don't believe us, but about the flush and how we are able to get calories up without seeing an increase in body fat. I mean, most people, especially when they're coming to us from a functional standpoint, they notice weight decrease, right? Mostly because we're getting the inflammation out of the body. But I think that's a really fascinating thing about the flush, is that we are able to do that, increase calories, get the body into phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification, balance out leptin and ghrelin, which are hunger hormones, get everything working properly. And I think a big thing that most people don't understand, and about why we're able to do that with the flush, but food choices matter. And I think we're very much in a society right now that is like, oh, it's just calories, calories in, calories out, nothing else matters. And that's
Yeah.
just not true, right? If you're doing 2,000 calories of processed crappy foods, which is very inflammatory, is going to cause a lot of stress in the body and cause digestive issues. And, I could go on. Compared to 2,000 calories of the flush, where it's very intentional anti-inflammatory foods, that's a very different thing. And I think that's something that in this day and age of like TikTok and Instagram and everyone trying to say like, oh, you can eat whatever you want and lose weight and stuff like that. They're not thinking of it in terms of the hormonal impact and the metabolic impact, and that your food choices dictate how your body responds ultimately.
Yep. It's so true. And in thinking of like those food sources, that you were talking about, like a lot of times, and this is a little bit more geared to competitors, but functional health matters for them too, is right after competing, your food sources, the quality, the quantities matter so much. You want to go to all of the crap food. I get it. But and it's not to say that you shouldn't have, a few things. I get it. Like you just did something really hard and cool, like totally understand. But because that the flush is full of such micronutrient dense food, you almost don't even want the other stuff, because you're fueling your body with the stuff that you need. And so like those sugar cravings aren't really there. That's what I found. And I thought that that was really cool. And I would say any of my clients that have gone through a highly anti-inflammatory plan with me know that as well. Like all of a sudden kind of those cravings go away because you're getting all the micronutrients that you actually need. And then along with that, when I was in a position that I needed to gain weight. Obviously, I want to still build muscle, and I can't just do that with no body fat on me. And so you got to have like a mindset switch pretty quickly to get to that health and hormonal balance. And that's the biggest thing I think I would say this for me, for you, for any of our clients as well. That mindset shift, the sooner you can make it, the sooner your body calms down and lets it do what you want it to do. When we start overthinking all of the, oh, should I be drinking this shake? Should I really have 5 meals a day? Jane, is six too much? Like, no, you're good. Like, actually, so what I did, and you might laugh at me, but I actually started just kind of doing like some gratitude daily. Like, I have a strong body. I get to go to the gym. I'm walking my dog. Like, a lot of people can't do that, especially if you're not healthy and you feel like crap. And so like I'm just like, okay, cool. Like I need body fat, I need muscle, right? We need both of those things. And in order to do that, food is fuel again. And that mindset switch really matters because you can really just knock yourself down to a really low place. And that is stress on the body. And if you don't
Yes.
get through that, it's really hard for any of the work that we do to really work.
I think it's funny that you mentioned the gratitude journaling because I don't think that's silly at all. I gratitude journal every day. I think everybody should, honestly. Like it's part of my morning routine. Because it changes your mindset and it changes your outlook and it gives you the ability to see things maybe a little bit more clearly than when we stay in a negative space. And it is tough when you come out of competing because you're the leanest you've ever been. You look like a genetic freak, like you're absolutely amazing. And it feels so good to look that way. And when you start seeing body fat coming back on, it immediately, like this is where body dysmorphia comes from. And this is why so many people um like absolutely freak out, but you have to remember that it is for a reason and it is for your health and it is so that you can start gaining muscle again and feel good again and sleep again and get less brain fog. All of those reasons, it's for a purpose, and you have to be able to accept your body and love your body in every stage that it's in,
Yeah.
whether and that goes for everybody, not just competitors. But if you don't love yourself when you're obese, you're not going to love yourself when you're fit. And that goes for competitors. If you don't love yourself when you're on stage, you're not going to love yourself when you're off season, and vice versa.
Yeah. It's so true because you can't identify with like the shape of your body. That's not your identity. It shouldn't be. It can't be. And if it is, like there's some internal growth that has to happen, some internal work that, you really got to put some emphasis on in order to be the best person you want to be. Now, listen, we do the internal work to help people get to the external results. We're not going to take away from that. I get that because I understand, the feeling of feeling. I don't look at it as lean anymore. I think of like strong, right? Like if I'm strong and can go to the gym and I can actually activate the muscles I want to activate. Remember, I went through back surgery. I never want to deal with that again. And if I'm not activating the right muscles, like injuries happen. And so I think about those things too, but oftentimes those go to the wayside when we're just focused on the scale and the weight loss. And so it is really important. And I love that in general at Scooby Health, like that doesn't we always think of that, like that always has to be the first thing. I mean, to the point where like we're going to have a client know, like, listen, if this isn't the route for you right now, cool, go do the internal work and then come to me. And then at that point, like, let's talk about optimizing hormones and gut health and all of the things to get you feeling good for sure.
And because you need the mindset to be able to achieve those things, right? Like doing a lot of the work that we do, whether it's a reverse diet, whether it's dealing with functional issues, it's it's not sunshine and roses. We're not saying, it's tough because it's more of a mental game than a physical game when it comes to repairing what is going on internally, from a metabolic standpoint or a hormonal standpoint, right? Like you don't get the payoff you do as when it's just a weight loss journey and you see the scale going down every week, right? It's a mental
Right.
struggle to be like, I have to show up and I have to eat more than I've ever wanted to eat in my life. And I have to see the scale go up, in terms of a reverse diet, or even from, in terms of, say, we're running a GI protocol and it's like, okay, I have to eat low FODMAP, I have to do these things. And I don't see this like physical payoff. So you have to be in a good place mentally just to be able to deal with that. I
It's
mean, I
so
know
true.
even for myself right now, I'm on my adrenal healing. I don't love where my body is at right now, but I love myself enough to know that I have to prioritize my health and my healing. And that even though I go week to week to week with maybe the scale not changing, because that's not the focus right now, the focus is on getting healthy. Um, it's what allows me to keep going is that gratitude and that love for myself and the fact that I know that this is a health journey and a healing journey, not at this point a fat loss journey.
Yep. And that health phase, at least in my opinion, I think is so much harder
It is.
than going into a caloric deficit, because you see that like tangible thing each day or each week or in your body, whatever it is, a picture, a scale, you can feel it. You're like, yes, this is awesome. But like, you're going to be so much better because of that health phase. And I'm just letting everyone know, like, it's not an easy journey. Like, we've both been through multiple health phases. I didn't compete for 3 years, and I didn't focus on weight loss for 3 years, after going, stage competition to competition to competition, where all you're focused on is that scale dropping. So, again, like, that's the extreme, but that's what we're doing with general population. It's just not as such an extreme of dieting down to those low levels. And then something else you said about the healing properties. Like, when I think of a rewarding reverse, there's this like longevity and healing that you have to put the emphasis and your mindset on, to get to those goals, because eventually then you're going to live and feel good in the body that you're in.
Exactly. And especially from like a competitive standpoint, you want a body that you love year round, right? It may not be
Yeah.
stage lane year round, but you want a body that you love year round. And the trap that most competitors or a lot of competitors fall into is that they get stage lean, and then after the show, they go off the rails, right? They eat everything in sight. They gain 30 pounds in a month. They just absolutely go off the rails. And that not only destroys your metabolism, but you gain a lot of excess body fat very, very quickly, which is going to, it's stress on the body. It's going to affect your hormones, your thyroid, all of those things. And then that makes dieting down so much harder the next time, right? And
Yes.
yeah, and so I think anybody who has competed has either been there or known someone that has been there. And that's why reverse dieting and doing it properly is so, so important, because there is nothing health happening in that other
There's
way,
not.
right? You're not going to upregulate your hormones. You're not going to improve your health. You're just going to gain a bunch of excess body fat while keeping your metabolism and your metabolic function downregulated.
Yep.
Um, and so doing it in a proper way and in a health way, I mean, you can attest to this. You were just telling me about your blood work, right? Then when you do it health first, your entire life changes.
Yep. I think that's so good to bring up is, what are the tangible things that people can do in a health phase to know they're getting healthy? And one of them is labs. We talk about it all the time. You can do labs. If you don't have access to labs, you can get a Dutch test. It goes straight to your home. There's pros and cons of, well, there's pros of both. Let's be real. There's pros of both.
Yeah.
Um, but if you want to look at your internal health and optimizing hormone health and internal health markers, like, what better way than to see what's actually going on internally? And so for me personally, I do labs depending on what kind of phase I'm in, anywhere from every 3 months to every 6 months, just so I have a pulse of what is happening and if we are seeing improvements. That's one way. Now, that's great because we love the data. Next way, you can't get labs every 4 weeks. It's also not smart. That's, your red blood cells haven't recirculated. So, like, why would you do that? But you can go off of biofeedback. So, something me and you do as coaches is each week we ask for that biofeedback. And while, yeah, a client may not feel like it's improving, we're looking at the teeny tiny details. And then once, week after week, and then it's been a month or 2 months, and all of a sudden, the person who was sleeping 5 hours is saying they're sleeping seven. Like, that is a success. And that's one tool and strategy that we use as coaches to ensure, and I use it with myself, to ensure I'm making progress. So I can give you some examples of when I was in a caloric deficit of biofeedback that wasn't so great. Now, I knew it wasn't going to be great because I was purposely getting ready for a show. Sleep was the biggest thing for me. So I said that a little bit in the beginning, but like, I was not sleeping. I mean, when I was getting down and dirty with the big caloric deficit, sleep went to the wayside. Now, there's a reason why. Well, one, my body's a little bit under stress. So when your body's under stress, your cortisol starts pumping. And cortisol is that hormone we want to peak in the morning to make us alert. So if it's peaking through the night, you're guess who's awake. And then the other thing that happens is your progesterone tanks. And so when that cortisol is rising, your progesterone is no longer pumping. Progesterone binds to a neurotransmitter called GABA, and GABA is a relaxing hormone. So guess what? We don't have that anymore. And now I'm waking up at 3 a.m. Personally, I don't have the literature behind this, but I do think testosterone plays a role in sleep as well, because when my testosterone levels are level, I sleep way better. I just don't know the research behind that to say that indefinitely.
So I
And
don't know the research behind that either, but I believe that 100%. And I know for myself because my background being last year, I tried to prep, my body wasn't responsive,
yep,
dealing with adrenal issues. And then when I had a Dutch test done and saw that my testosterone was in the tank, once I started HRT and I started supplementing with testosterone, my sleep improved so much. Now, in my case, my progesterone was also really, really low. So that plays into not sleeping as well. But once that testosterone started kicking in, I would say sleep improved tenfold.
totally. So that's just like one of the, one of the markers that we look at week to week. Digestion's another one. When your body starts stressing, typically digestion's the first thing to go. You might feel a little bit more bloat, gas, constipation, diarrhea. Diarrhea is a stress response. So, these are just things to note, because a lot of times people are living with these symptoms normal and they've yo-yo dieted their entire life and don't realize that some of that dieting may be playing a role in what's happening in terms of that feedback your body's giving you.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and I think you mentioned yo-yo dieting, and I think, I know we're on the reverse dieting topic, but I think it's important to mention that when we yo-yo diet, this is the reason why so many people are dealing with functional issues and digestive issues and all of these things. It's because of diet culture. And it's the reason why functional nutrition is gaining so much steam right now, because there's an entire generation or several generations at this point of women who have unresponsive bodies because they have fallen into diet culture their entire adult lives. And so what happens when we're dieting is that, when we start to lose weight, our metabolic function goes down, right? Because we're getting smaller, we're eating less calories, our body slows down to accommodate for that. Our body is smarter than we are. It's always going to do what it has to keep you alive, ultimately,
It's
which
so true.
includes slowing down the metabolic process. And so then what happens in diet culture is that people go too restrictive for too long. Maybe they, are doing also a ton of cardio and working out and all of that on top of it, which just is going to reduce that metabolic function as well. But instead of reversing out of it, like we're talking about, doing a reverse dieting where you can maintain that goal weight that you got to, while increasing calories and therefore increasing metabolic function, what they do is they just go back to whatever their normal was before, which the standard American diet is very high in processed foods, refined sugars, so they go back to eating like crap, which means their metabolic function stays low while their weight goes up. Instead of reverse dieting, where we want weight to stay and metabolic function to go up. And then when you repeat that over the years, you're continuing to fall into that diet culture trap, yo-yo dieting. Metabolic function gets lower and lower and lower and lower and lower. Weight goes up and up and up and up and up. And this is where we get weight loss resistance and cellular inflammation and,
Yep.
the hormonal downregulation and all of those things. So, I mean, ultimately, our job at Scooby Health is that we want to put a stop to yo-yo dieting and diet culture, and we want to do things health first and do things like reverse dieting so we never have to go through this again.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's so many things that you just said. All I was thinking of is like somebody coming to me and saying, well, what I used to do doesn't work anymore. I know.
Yes.
And it won't for me either. And it's like you have to keep like you gotta stay one step ahead of the game a little bit. But exactly to your point, when you've done the diet or the extreme sports or the extreme lifting or one thing after the other, and then life has happened to you too, job changes and family things and all of this, like all your body knows stress is stress. So whether it was from the job or from eating low or eating too much or whatever it was, like it's stress is stress. And then, you get to a point where you're now 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. Your hormones are doing their little dance, their roller coaster ride. And now your body is not going to respond to what it used to. We know. But that's what's cool is there's so much information out there now, and I get it can be overwhelming, but that's what's great about the coaching space, because you get one-on-one guidance, as to those, to the health first, to like really digging deep there. Not about weight loss, it's about health. Like, let's do those foundations. We both know it's going to take a few months, and then we can talk about potentially dropping body fat. But also, what's cool about a reverse diet, if that's what your body needs, guess what? A lot of times that inflammation and some body fat drops pretty quickly. It's scary. I get it. I know. I went from minimal calories to 2,200 in about 8 days, and it was terrifying. But the quicker that I got in control of my mindset, and the stress just kind of like dissipated. It was gone, because my body's like, okay, this is what I need right now.
Yes. And your body knows what you need. I mean, it always does. Ultimately, we may not know, but our body does. I
We
think,
might think we know.
yeah, right. I think you touched on some really good points there. And I think, in terms of from a coaching journey, I think when it comes to sort of these more complex protocols in terms of like reverse dieting and stuff like that, it is very helpful to have an outside perspective and somebody guiding that journey. Because like you said, there is so much information out there, but there's also so much misinformation, right? If you Google reverse dieting, you're going to get, a million people's different opinions on that. And if you're not wanting to go to the PubMed articles and stuff like that, chances are you're not getting the most accurate information that you could. And then I think, in terms of if somebody say, not necessarily a competitor, but just, somebody who's on a weight loss journey, you cannot diet forever. And I try to like drive this home to everybody, but you need to take diet breaks. You need to reverse out of it for a little while. You need to stop putting your body under so much stress, because that's how you're going to get to a place where you don't want to be, instead of getting to that place you want to be.
Oh, that is a really good point, because I think what happens is when you're in a diet phase and you see the scale going down, you see body composition changes, you think this is what I should do forever to keep this body that I'm living in right now. And it's not true. I think for me, if I want to get back on stage again, and I'm going to go pretty quick, if I didn't come out and I just stayed at those low calories, my body would have done what I needed to do through food, but through stress, it would have started holding on to body fat, even at a low caloric intake. Our bodies do know way more than we know, and better for us than we think sometimes. So I
Yeah.
get that.
And that would have been a recipe for you getting back into adrenal insufficiency and all of those sorts
Yep.
of issues, right? Yeah.
Yep.
But
It's
I
so
think
true.
also, not just from the perspective of once I got to this goal weight, I need to stay in this calorie range forever, but also people that say have 100 pounds to lose, or 60 pounds. When you're getting down and say you've already lost 20 pounds, like you need to take a diet break. You need to reverse out of that, get your metabolism back up, so that we can go back into a cut and stuff like that. But, cutting for a year at a time or 2 years at a time or whatever, I mean, that's just going to destroy your body.
Yeah. One other thing I just wanted to touch on, because I think it's important, and I kind of found myself doing this too, and I'm just going to be really vulnerable here, is don't compare yourself to other people, especially on Instagram. We have way too much access to things coming at us. I was even looking at like other people that were in the same competition as me. I'm like, man, she's still staying lean. Well, guess what? I tried that method and it didn't work. And I ended up in a little bit of a hormonal mess at the age of 36. And so, like, don't compare yourself. It's so much easier said than done. But when you start to do that, you lose sight of your own health and what is really best for your body. And all I can think in my own situation is I have certain muscle groups I'm still trying to grow, and they're not going to grow in a caloric deficit, and they weren't growing in a caloric deficit. All I was doing in that caloric deficit was showing the muscle that I already had. If I want to build anything out, like for example, I'm trying to build denser glutes. That means I need more lean tissue. I'm not going to do that without a little bit of body fat and a hormonal balance. So, what's cool, and I'm going to circle back to my labs that I just got about 7 weeks post show, there's really nothing wrong with them. Like my TSH is a 1.5, my T3, T4, maybe a tiny bit low, but I'm going to boost that naturally with supplementation. You know, my sex hormones are looking good. My vitamin D is good. Like all, no inflammation. My CRP is under a 1. Like there, and my cholesterol's on point, right? Like there's all these things that could be stressors in my body, but because I fed it in a way that I should have this go round, and I also did the work prior to dieting. So it was like the pre and the post do matter.
And I think that's important, especially for competitors. Like you need to do the work beforehand as well. You need to be in a really healthy place where your calories are high, you're feeling good, you're in a good body composition before you even start to think about prep. But I think you touched on a lot of really good points there, and I think one of them, and I keep having this conversation with this one woman that I'm currently we're prepping, and she keeps stressing about the scale, but she keeps wanting to build. And I'm like, no, girl, like we are in prep, we are cutting. There is no building when we are in a cut, right? Like those two things are very diametrically opposed. Now, in reverse dieting, yeah, we may be able to get leaner while building muscle, not from a competitor standpoint. Well, but anyways, yes, so there's certain instances where those things can work kind of together, but really those things are diametrically opposed, right? And as a natural athlete, you have to understand that the goal in prep is to maintain the muscle you have while getting to an unnatural level of leanness. But to go into a prep thinking that you can build muscle is ridiculous, like unless you're on gear. But that's another topic for another time.
Right. Well, that's so true because even if you look at the general population, most people come to us because they're not happy with their physique or their health, right? Like we get a mix of both and usually they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But the first thing they want to do is drop all this body fat and expect to be toned. And I'm like, yo, we didn't even build any muscle. So if the
Yeah.
muscle wasn't there to begin with, it didn't just appear. And being in a caloric deficit is not what is going to make you grow.
At
I know it's a
100%.
tough pill to swallow, but that is the God's honest truth.
And I think there seems to be this like misconception, and I think this is another influencer thing, right? Because you see these influencers who are on steroids, who get leaner and get bigger at the same time. And so people think that that is normal, that
Yeah.
all of a sudden, and I also think, there's also that misconception because I've had a lot of people when I'm in prep, they're like, "Oh, you're so much bigger." And I'm like, "No, I just look bigger because you can see the muscle."
Oh, yeah. I know what you're saying.
Right? Yeah, and so I think that's a difference, but to really understand, like if you're a person who hasn't spent time building muscle, that tone isn't going to come from dieting. It doesn't
No,
happen.
that's not what happens. I've had plenty of people too where I've seen them like on stage, not my personal clients, but like competitors I've seen that are just small. Like, I mean, for us, it's bodybuilding. You don't have muscle, like then you're not gonna place, but it's no different for general population. If you didn't have muscle to start with, like you're not just going to gain that. Like we actually have to do some work in the gym to build the lean tissue, drop the body fat, and then you look toned.
Yeah, and you need the calories to support that. Like no matter what anybody tells you, you're not going to build in a deficit. Like it's just not going to happen. And I think that's something that most people don't understand because they're like, well, I'm working out 6 days a week and I'm eating 500 calories or 1,000 calories or 1,500 calories, and I don't understand why I don't look the way I want to. And it's like, well, mostly like at this point, you're now burning your muscle for fuel because your body's like, hey, I can't keep doing all of this work. And I need to get energy from somewhere. So the little lean mass that you have is now being used as fuel. So ultimately, all you're doing is not only reducing your metabolic capacity, but you're using your muscle for fuel. And that's how we end up looking,
Yes.
skinny fat ultimately.
I mean, that's actually that's so true too. It's so true. This is such a good topic. I feel like we could go on and on, but I suppose we should wrap it up. Is there any, last advice that you would give to somebody, who maybe is stuck and they've been in a diet phase? It could be a competitor, it could be any female. I mean, that's what this is geared towards. But maybe it's, what advice would you give if you've got anything else to say? What would be one more piece of advice?
I think, the biggest thing, if you can afford to invest in yourself, hire a coach because that's going to be able to give you that outside opinion of what is going on ultimately. A lot of times when we are dieting, we don't see ourselves clearly and we can't make adjustments clearly. Like it's a really hard thing to navigate on your own. And especially if this isn't what you do, for you or I, this is absolutely, we eat, breathe, live this sort of information. But for the average person, when you're just going like, oh, well, this person on Instagram said this, and this person on TikTok said this, and I read this article that said this, you get so inundated with information that you don't really know which direction you should go in. So if you can, I would say invest in yourself, and hire a coach so that you can have help optimizing your health while achieving your body goals. The other thing I would say is take diet breaks. Even if you're not where you want to be yet, take a diet break, reverse out of it slowly. Pay attention to your biofeedback, make sure that you feel good. If you feel like shit or your digestion is off or, these things aren't normal and you don't have to accept them as normal. There's
Mhm.
always a ways to improve your health and improve how you are feeling. So I think those are the biggest things I would say. What about you? What
I
advice
think
would you offer?
I know. I feel like we've given so much, but I think for me, I'm going to just circle back to the mindset piece and really nail that in here because if you don't have the right mindset, you are going to continue to go round and round in a circle and you're never going to love yourself. And that is like the biggest piece, at least for me, that was a shift. I feel like I was a little bit faking it till I made it before, and that's not a place you want to be. Maybe I was throwing something out in terms of perception 5 years ago of how I wanted to be perceived, but deep down there was still work that had to be done. And I know that there's growth because I feel good eating a normal amount of food now where I didn't used to. And that's just raw, real material as a female who has dealt with hormone stuff and tried to stay in a caloric deficit. But that mindset piece, you got to do what you got to do, whether it's a gratitude journal, whether it is just talking to yourself each day and talking yourself up. Something that worked really well for me was learning how to do thought work. I didn't know that that was something that existed, but it absolutely exists. So if you're not ready to hire a coach to guide you through nutrition and health, get the mindset coach. Get them, lock them in. They exist. If you need help finding one, we got you. But that would be my last piece and biggest advice is let's get that mindset to the right place so that we can help you the best that we can help you.
I love that. And I think mindset is so important. And I know that's something that I talk to my clients a lot about is mindset. And I tell everybody like this journey, whether it's a fat loss journey, whether it's a health journey, is mindset first and foremost. Like it is more of a mindset journey than it is a physical journey. And once you get that mindset piece, everything else is so much easier and will fall into place. I'm a very big believer that what you think about dictates your reality. So if
Yeah.
you are looking at something in a negative light or you believe something is hard, that is your reality. And on the flip side, if you look at that same thing in a positive light, or you believe that it is easy, that is your reality. So your mindset
True.
dictates everything.
It's so true. Yep, agreed.
The other thing, I'm
Not done
like,
yet. Not done.
yeah, one more thing that I would say is let go of the scale. Let go of the number on the scale, especially when it comes to like dieting. So many people have a goal number in mind. Let go of that goal number. And then when you are doing things like reverse dieting or whatever, don't freak out about the number on the scale. I always use myself as an example to my clients, but I remember when I first started dieting, the first time I ever got down to compete, I was 130 pounds on stage, which I'm 6 feet tall. That was extremely tiny, right? But when I had started that journey, I was over 200 pounds. And like, to me, that was the worst thing in the world. And I remember saying, like, if I ever get to over 200 pounds again, like, just kill me. Like, that's the worst thing that could happen. And now I'm consistently over 200 pounds, right? Like, that's just, I've put on a lot of muscle. The last time I competed, I was 190 pounds on stage. That's just where my set point is now, is around that 200-pound mark. And so I think if you can let go of the number on the scale, you're more likely to achieve the body composition that you want. Whereas if you stay caught up in that number on the scale, you're going to, it's a very unhealthy mindset, but you're going to sabotage yourself every time.
It is so true. And I feel like we need to do an episode just on that. Because like you, even when I was dieting down for the stage, I still had this like old mindset of I've got to hit this number, I've got to hit this number. And it wasn't even about that. Because when I got on stage, whatever, it doesn't matter how much I weighed, but like I looked way better and more muscular than I've ever looked before. And I was no lighter in terms of the scale weight than I ever had been before. So it really doesn't matter. And then also on the reverse piece as well, well, I can just say it, I'm sitting about 100, between 135 and 140 pounds. I'm 5'4", a little shorter. Um, but like my muscles are full. And like that's the difference is like I still have a shape, but my muscles are full. And that is why the scale doesn't matter, because it's one data point that we use. And sometimes I just tell people, you don't get to use the scale anymore. Nope, we're done with it. It doesn't matter. We're in a health phase. Like, I don't care what the scale says. But pictures really do help, at least from a coaching standpoint. And I'll be honest, even in my own journey, taking progress pictures actually really helps to keep me in a pretty grounded place, because I'm like, dang, I am strong. Like, and I look at pictures in that light, not fat, skinny. I look at strength, and you can tell. Anyway, all right. That's all I got now.
Oh, yes. I think we have touched on everything. I feel like this is a topic that you could literally talk about forever, though. There's so much information, but yes, I think we're good.
Awesome.
So thank you for listening to the F3 podcast. Come back each week to learn more about the 4 topics we talk about most: gut health, adrenal health, weight loss resistance, and navigating perimenopause and menopausal years.
Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe for all things functional health. If you're interested in learning more, you can find us both at scoobyhealth.com or follow along on Instagram.